Ciao, jewelry making friends. My name is Joey Balistreri for those of you who are new to my channel and don't know me yet. And so welcome here if you are new, and welcome back if you have been on my channel before. And today I have the sweetest little project. It is a bead weaving project, but a super easy one that only takes a few minutes, and this is the result. These are absolutely amazing. So today I'm only going to make this little girl and this little boy, and then I am actually doing these for another video. So today we'll just do these together. They do not take long, as you can see. They do not take many beads either. And once you have these little people made, you can do anything you want with them. They make really sweet little charms for a bracelet. They make adorable, very petite necklaces for little girls, or even for moms and grandmoms. You can do the colors of the beads to represent their children or grandchildren and create like a charm necklace with all their little people. Or if you're a new mother, it would make a great gift for a new mother who's having a baby. They are adorable zipper pulls or backpack pulls, and I am doing something even different than that with them. So once you have these little guys made, you can just have so much fun with them. So that's what we're going to do today, and I'll show you what went into them. I have a little collection here of these super duos. They are these little beads with two holes, and they kind of look like a little piece of rice. And I have some 15-0 seed beads. I have some 8-0 seed beads and some 11-0 seed beads, and you can really choose whatever colors you want. Now I always use a kind of neutral colored bead for the face, for the head, and so in this case I'm using 8mm pearls. And now on the top of their little heads I have put a wire guardian, but you can do a loop of seed beads there if you prefer that look. And also I have done some kind of, you can leave their little heads plain, but I've done some kind of specialty things. I have these little acrylic bell flowers that I thought made a really sweet little girly hat for the little girl. And then for the little boy, I just found a really plain bead cap that's not frilly, you know, that just kind of has the shape of something a little boy would wear. And then for the neck on the little boy, that is an 8-0 seed bead. And you can do an 8-0 seed bead in your color for your little girl, but I had in my stash these tiny little Swarovski crystal rondelle spacers, and I wanted to make her a little bit fancy because girls like a little bling, and so I used that on her. But again, you have the option to just stick with your seed beads, or you can, you know, amp up your design a little bit with sparkles. So as you can tell, I had a lot of fun making these little people, and we're going to do the boy and the girl together. They are essentially the same, but a little bit of difference in the bodies. So you only need about 20 inches of thread, and I'm using crystal thread, so I know it's really difficult to see, but it's really the color that I need for my pearls. And I did choose 11-0 seed beads in white for the arms and legs, but you can do like a metallic silver or gold. You can change up the colors to whatever you like. And I have just threaded a number 10 needle, and I have a bead that's, you know, larger than my other beads, and definitely not a color that I'm using as my stop bead. And so for those of you who have never started a little bead weaving project, you just bring your stop bead down to the end and then loop your needle back in the opposite direction. It does not need to be tight, and just pull it. And what I want to do is leave enough length at the end of my thread to tie off, because when I'm all finished with my little people, I'll use this tail thread that's here, this little bit that's here, that will get used to tie a knot and to tighten up the head. So let's start with our little girl. So the first thing that I did is pick up a little 11-0 seed bead, and then I did her little hat, this little flower, and her little head. the 8mm glass pearl. And just bring that all the way down to my stop bead. So it looks like that. And now I'm going to pick up this little crystal rondelle spacer, but as I said, if you want to just do an 8/0 seed bead, that works as well. But I had these and they are Swarovski, so I think it makes a really pretty little necklace. And the next thing I'm going to do is start with her little arms. Let me move my little mascots over here so we can still see them, but they're not in the way. So I'm going to do her little arms, and on this, about 6 seed beads works for this. So that's what I'm going to do for the arms, 4, 5, 6. But if you want to, you can adjust that a little bit and do 7. If you want to do like what I did on her to make it look like she has a little ruffle or a little sleeve, I added a little bit of length to the arms. And on the same, when we get to the legs, you'll see, but I did a couple of contrasting colors to sort of look like her little socks, you know, so it just adds detail to the overall design. But I'm going to just do this little girl plain. So she's got 6 seed beads for her arms, and then you can do the same 11/0s if you want to for the hands, but I've gone down to these tiny little 15/0s. And you can do 3 or 5. I just like 3. So I'm just putting 3 on my needle, and I'm going to bring that down to her little arm. And then I'm going to skip over those 3 that I just added and put my needle back through the 6 that I did for her arm. I'm so far away from my face because I really want to make sure you see what I'm doing. So, and let me just move my microphone cord a bit. That's better. And then just pull tight, and you'll see when you pull it tight that you kind of force those 3 little tiny 15/0 seed beads to kind of poke out, and it looks like her little hand. Now her the head and all of that is going to be a little bit wobbly. But it will tighten. We will tighten it up. We're going to work our way down the body and back up again, and it will tighten up. So from here, we go ahead and pick up the first little part of her body. So just one of those super duos, and I'm just going to bring that down and just let it hang there, and then we'll go right to her other arm. So another 6, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then another 3. She's got to have little hands on her other side too, and just repeat that same thing where we just bring everything down. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. Maybe that's helpful. And then I'm going to skip those 3 with my needle and put my needle back through all of the arm seed beads and the first hole of the super duo, so you can see, and then just pull that tight. And like I said, see how on every single one of these that I've made, this part loosened up, but just be patient with it. Don't worry about it. We will tighten everything up. Just get in there and kind of pull my thread. Okay, and now if you can see, let me pull it up here. If you can see my thread, let me lay everything as it's supposed to go. My thread is coming out the top hole of that super duo, and so I need to go down to the second hole of that so that I can add in her other parts of her little dress. And one thing about this as well is, as you can see, her head is off to one side because of the way the thread is, but when we come back up, we're going to run our thread through there to reinforce and to center her head. So don't worry about how that looks at this point. And so now we're going to pick up another super duo and let that go down to our work and go back through the bottom hole of that super duo, so our thread is coming down the side. Let me pull it tight so you can see. And pick up 2 more super duos. I just took a pause to readjust the camera so that I could leave her laying on my mat and you could see what was happening. So after I added those last 2, the middle one here is just going to drop down, and I'm going to put my needle through the top hole of that last bead that I added, and then kind of make a circle, put my needle through the very first super duo that I added and the other one. So it's like that. And when you pull it, let me pull it tight and then I'll give you a close-up view. When you're working with super duos, it's pretty easy to see. They fit together so nicely like a puzzle piece. Now, her head is a little bit loose, and as I said, a little bit off to one side, but that's what we have for the body. And now my thread is coming out the side of that super duo, and I need to weave my way down. So I'm going to go to the second hole of that bead and through the top hole of my middle bead. Also I need to run my thread. I need to come out the complete other side of her dress. And now I'm going to add in another super duo, and at this point, I want to add in her, and you see how it's laying. At this point, right in this space here, I'm going to start adding in her hip joint and her leg. So my needle is going to go through that second hole, the bottom hole of that super duo. And now I'm going to pick up 1 bead that is for her hip. And now I'm going to count 5 beads for her leg and then 2 for her sock, if that makes sense. 4, 5 white beads. And then I'm going to do 2 of these 11-0 metallic pink beads for her little socks. And I'm going to lay her down now that you can see and just pull that down to her body. And now her little shoe goes on. So I'm going to pick up another super duo and drop that down. And now I'm going to go back up through the hole that is empty on her little shoe. And just pull it tight. And then I'm going to pick up one of those little 15-0 beads that we used for the hand, for the little hands, and drop that down for like a little pom-pom on the top of her shoe. And then I'm going to go back through the same hole that my thread is coming out of on the super duo, but not that bead that we just added, because if you go back through the bead, you'll just pull it out. But this will lock her little pom-pom in place, and also our thread is now on the bottom of her shoe, and now we can go up through her shoe, up through all the beads, the 2 beads that we just added for her sock, and all the way up those beads for her leg, but skipping over that very first bead that is her hip joint. And then once we pull that through, we'll pick up 1 more. That's going to be the second part of her little hip joint, and then go through the middle, very middle, that hole in the bottom hole of that middle super duo, I meant to say. And just pull it tight, and you'll see it comes into place. So you'll see she has 1 little hip, 1 leg, and 1 little shoe with a pom-pom. Now you can also do this little technique with the bead if you want her to have like high heels. If you put your little 15-0 here, instead of on the top. It does kind of look like a high heel, but I kind of like these as little children. You know, I kind of like the look of like the little pom-poms on the shoe, or the little embellishments that kids like to put on their shoes. Now we're simply going to repeat the same thing on the other side. We need to do the hip joint. We're going to do the same thing as on the other side in reverse, which with my dyslexia, that always gives me trouble when I have to reverse things. But I do it kind of in my head separately. I do the 1 bead for her hip joint, and then I'm going to count 5 beads for her leg, and then 2 of the pink beads that I chose for her little socks, and then her shoe. And then I'm going to come up from the bottom. Oh, I'm so sorry, you guys. I just realized I'm not in view of the camera. So let me pull up here and show you. So I've added on her leg, her socks, her shoe, and I'm just going to let her hang over my finger. And now my needle is going to come up to the top of that Super Duo. That's her shoe. I'm going to lay her down again and pull that tight. And now I'm going to pick up another one of those little 15-ohs, and that's going to be her pom-pom. Let me pick her up again so you can see. Whoops. Poor little girl. So you can see that little bead is right on the top of her shoe, and so now I'm going to not touch that bead but go back down through that hole, and when I pull that tight, she has a little pom-pom on the top of her shoe, and now my thread is coming out of the bottom of her shoe, so I can go up through the bottom and then back through her socks and through her leg. This is so much easier when I'm not trying to film it and show you what I'm doing, and the camera's not between me and my face. So I really hope you guys will give this a try. I mean, this is difficult because I have to keep picking it up to show you, but when you lay this on your mat and do this without trying to explain it to someone, this is so easy and so gratifying. It comes together so quickly, and it's adorable. As you can see with the work we've done, she's already taking shape. And we're on her little hip joint, so now I'm going to pick up that last little bead that goes in her hip joint and just bring that down, and then my last Super Duo will go right in place. And as you can see, when it's on the mat, you see it just falls in line like a little soldier. So I'm going to go up the side of that last Super Duo and put my needle through that hole and just go all the way across. Oh, what did I do? Get a Super Duo that has a blocked hole. That is Murphy's Law when you're filming. I don't know what that is. I can have an entire bag of these beads, and I start my camera rolling and I have one that has a blocked hole. It's just the way it is. Can you see? I happen to have one that the hole is completely blocked. Let me see if I can clear it with my needle. Nope. So I've shown you guys this before. I keep this little set of bead reamers that I got from Amazon on the side of my table, and sometimes it works really great for clearing a hole. I've linked these before in my videos, and I can try to link it again. And this one may not work on this one. The glass is just like, yeah, I'm going to have to pause and get another pink Super Duo because this one has only got one hole. Okay, I have my last pink Super Duo added to my little girl. Let me turn her the right way. Like I said, sometimes with this type of a thing, it's much easier to just leave her laying on your mat so you can really see what you're doing. And so I hope you can see. In fact, let me zoom in a little bit more. And so now my thread is coming out the bottom hole of that last super duo, and I'm going to go to the top hole and then connect it right in line with the other ones. So let me pick it up so you can see. See, my needle's going through the bottom hole of the next one, the top hole of the middle one, the bottom hole of that next row. And so if you can see my needle coming out there, I don't want my needle to come out there, because if I did that, in order to work my way back up, I'm going to have a lot of thread showing here on the side of my girl. So I'm going to back my needle out of that, and I want to come up in between those two super duos like that, and then just pull tight. And she's still a little bit wobbly, and I only looped my thread through my stop bead once, so it's moving a little bit, so that's why the top of her is not holding together, but we're going to fix that right now. So now that I'm coming out there, I can work my way back up, and I'm going to center her head now, because now I'll have a thread going up through her collar and her head from the opposite side. My thread is coming out right here, the bottom of the very first super duo that we put in. And so now I'm going to go through that top hole of that super duo and back up through her collar, her head, her little hat, and I won't go through the top. Yes, I will go through the top seed bead. So I'm going to pull my stop bead off. And at this point, you can tie a knot to firm everything up. Although I think I'm going to just reinforce her head a little bit. That's what I did on my other ones, especially if these are going to be a zipper pull. So I'm going to skip over my top little seed bead and go back down through her hat, her little face, and her collar, and pull that tight. And I'm going to go, let's see, I want to center that head. I'm going to go to this side and go back through that super duo, just the top hole, and just pull that tight. And there, now I have her centered. I have that super duo centered under her collar, and now I can go back up her head and go back up right through the top of that very top seed bead, and she is nice and tight. And so from here, I am going to go ahead and tie a little knot. That's why we left that tail. Let me back out just a tiny bit. That's why we left that tail. And then at this point, you can do a little loop with your seed beads if you want to, but I'm doing wire guardians so that I can attach it, you know, with a wire guardian, I can attach it to a jump ring or anything. And as I said, I'm making this for a project that I am doing my next video on. So that's, I just tied her off a little bit. Isn't she adorable? Oh, I just love this one. So now I'm going to pick up one of these little wire guardians, and I'm not even sure if my needle will go through. Yep, yeah, it does. And what did I do? Pulled it right out. I'm just going to put my wire guardian, and so this is a little bit tricky. You can thread your needle back on the other side, but I do it this way. I go up the other side with my tail thread just because I want it to be centered. It depends what you're going to do with it. If you're going to make a necklace or a charm out of it, you know, you probably want it centered. Let me stop for a moment. Like on this one, it's the little wire guardian, the little loop is off centered, and for what I'm doing with her, she's going to hang on something, and I actually want her to hang a little bit sideways, so I didn't care. But then on my little boy, I decided to center that wire guardian over the top of his seed bead, but even so, it still is not like, it's just the nature of it. So like I said, you can choose to do a little loop of seed beads here, or you can choose to put this wire guardian and do this. And so I'm doing this without a needle, but I'm just going to thread this back down the other side of that wire guardian and just pull it tight. And then I have my needle on this side, and then I'll go back down this side, and just making sure, if you are using a wire guardian, that your thread is nice and tight in the channel on the top. And so I don't know how well you can see with this clear thread, but here I can just pull it really tight and tie off right here. So I'm take my needle off and just tie a really nice surgeon's knot. And the cool thing about these little people is there's not really a front or a back either. They look good on both sides. So if you make a necklace, if you make a bracelet, a charm, anything like that, that's a little thing I'm going to do, is just close this wire guardian a little bit. See how there's space in between there? I'm just going to close it. That looks a little bit better. And I'm just going to do a surgeon's knot. I do a right over left, left over right, and get my little thread zap and just burn it off. Although you can use scissors if you want to, and you can also put a little dab of GS Hypo Cement, you know, a little bit of any kind of beading glue if you want to do that. But I like to use my little thread zap. If you have never seen this, it's got a battery inside, and you just press the button and that little tip heats up, and it's great if you have really tiny work like this, and it just burns the it just gets the thread right off of there without struggling with scissors or anything. And then from there you can either melt this thread down, or I will probably still, after I'm all finished filming, I'll probably still add just a little dab of glue. But our little girl is finished. I just think these are so delightful. Look at the detail on her little shoes, and she has her little pink socks on. They're just adorable. So let's move on to the little boy. I am using 4-pound Fireline, and again, about, just guesstimate, about 20 inches of Fireline. You can use 6-pound if you want to. You know, again, it depends. If you're planning to make this into a zipper pull or a pull for a backpack, you may want to use a little bit stronger thread. But I've never had a problem with them, so, you know, with them breaking. I'm just going to thread my needle, and we're going to do the exact same thing. Get our stop bead, bring it down to the end, and leave a nice little tail, so that we have room to add it, tie off, and add in our wire guardian at the end. So I'm just going to make that little loop around my stop bead. Start on him with a little 11-0 seed bead that's in like a dark turquoise color, and then his little bead cap for a hat. Thought that looked really cute. And then 8mm glass pearl for his head, just like we did before. And now on him, he's not going to have a fancy crystal collar, so I'm using one of these 8-0. It's a beautiful, like frosted, you know, frosted color seed bead that kind of match the super duos that are going to be his little outfit. But you can use any color that you want here. And we're going to do the same thing. Start with his arms. And so he's going to get 6 little beads for his arms. It is exactly, this part is exactly the same way as the way we did the little girl. And just bring those down. and then 3 of the little 15 O's. I just happen to have this color on hand, but you can really choose any color you want. And then just like before, we're not going to touch those. We're going to skip those and go back through the 6 little arm seed beads. And just come back through and pull tight. When you first start out with your 20 or so inches of thread, it grabs on everything. But that's okay. Just be patient. And sometimes I'll put my needle down and just get a hold of my thread and pull it tight. And so that part is done. And now we're going to pick up a super duo for his body and let that drop down to where we started his arm, and now do his other arm. 6 seed beads, 1, 2, 3. Run our needle back through the arm beads and the super duo. And you see, and just pull that tight. Okay, and just like before, his head is a little bit offset, but at the very end, when we run our thread back up through his head, we will straighten that out. So now we're going to come down to the second hole of that super duo and just pull that tight. Okay, so now I'm going to pick up another one of the super duos. Let me lay him down and move this thread out of the way and let this little super duo go right up next to the other one. And then I'm going to go down to the second hole of that super duo that I just added, that I just let drop down to my work. And you'll see we're kind of making a circle here. So I'm going to pick up another super duo and let that go down to my work and just let that drop down in the middle, and then pick up the 4th one for his little body or his little outfit. And when that gets down to your work, you'll see that you need to kind of make it, let me lay it on the mat, kind of make it, it looks a little strange, but see how they just fall into line. We're making like a diamond shape. So now the needle needs to go up to the top hole of that last one that we added, and through the bottom hole of the first one, and through the top hole of the super duo on the other side. And so when you pull that tight, you've just made like a circle with your thread, and it just locks all of them into place in the shape of a diamond. So no, it looks a little wonky right now, and his head is not centered yet, but that's what we have. Pull him up close. That's what we have. And now we're going to go down to just reinforce and go across, not coming out on the far side. We just want to come out of that top hole of the last super duo and back down again. And here's where we will do his little hips. And so on the little girl, we did 2 11-O's, but we want him to look like a little boy. So here I'm just going to add in 1 8-O seed bead and then do his legs and his little socks if you want to do socks. So I do their legs a little bit longer. I do 3, 4, 5 seed beads. Let's see, what did I do here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 there. So I did 5 seed beads here, and then I'm going to do 2 of those darker 11-O's for his socks. And then he gets his little shoe. And I'm going to do the exact same thing where I come up from the bottom of his shoe. So my thread is on the bottom of his little shoe, and then pick up one of those tiny little 15 O's, and then go back down that same hole, but don't run your needle through the 15 O, and just pull it tight. Oh, my thread grabbed onto my other little boy. I wanted to leave it there because I think sometimes it's easy to see a sample when you're doing something like this, to see where you're going and not get, you know, no pun intended, but tangled up in your thread. So now I'm going to go up, same exact thing that we did on the little girl. The thread is coming out the bottom of the shoe, and I'm going to go underneath and come back up and go up through the two little colored beads that are his socks, and back up through everything, really, because now we have to get over to the other side. So his little hip and everything, and just pull tight. And now we go back through that super duo to get to the other side, and repeat exactly the same thing for his other leg. So picking up that last little 8O seed bead, and the same 1, 2, 3, did I count right? Yes, 5, and then 2 of these little colored 11 O's to be his little socks, and the last super duo for him, his little shoe. And then just really making a circle, kind of like we've been doing. Go up to the top and pick up the little pom-pom bead. Drop that down to the top of his shoe, and then make sure not to run your needle through that bead. Go back down to the bottom of his shoe and pull that tight. And now we can go up through the heel of his shoe, up through his sock, through his leg. And we're going to make our way back to the top of him as we did, so we can center his head and reinforce. And just find a thread path up to where we need to be to reinforce. And we have to do the same thing that we did on the little girl, is run the thread up through the opposite side. So can you see where I'm headed? So the little head is lopsided. So I'm making my way back up to the top, and I'm going to go through this super duo and then back up through that neck bead, that 8O that we put there. And I'll go, just like I did on the little girl, I'll go up through everything, not my, make sure you don't run your needle through your stop bead. And I'm going to go back down again, just reinforce everything. And also see my neck is still off to one side. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this stop bead off of here. Set that aside, and I'm going to pull that tight, and I'm not going to run my needle through my top little bead. Skip over that, and I'm going to go all the way down through his head and neck, and now go across that first super duo, my needle in there. Not the arm, just the super duo. Make sure your thread isn't caught on any little feet or hands. And now you'll see that his little head will center up. Can you see where my thread is coming out of the top of that super duo? And now I'm reinforcing, but I can also go up through his neck, his hat, everything. And when you pull tight, it will pull his head right to the center. See? It just works great that way. And so just like before, I'm going to tie off, make a couple of ties here, and then I will add in my wire guardian, just like on the other one. So they're very similar, just on the little boy. We just changed up the little 8/0 seed bead for the hips and just one, and you just make him look a little bit more boyish. And you have to decide if you're making, you know, something like a zipper pull that's going to need to be nice and strong. You might want to do extra reinforcing. What has happened? I got a loop here. That's the other thing, if you're using wire guardians, I don't know if you can see, but you have to make sure before you pull everything tight that your little thread is right in that channel on the top of the wire guardian. So I'm going to go through the back through the top of that first super duo and just go back up through his neck and his head. I've got a lot of threads going through now. And so how I end is just making sure that my thread is in that channel. See, I just pulled it tight and it wasn't in the channel. It's really important because you don't want to have thread kind of hanging out in the opening. Now I'm just going to remove my needle and tie off, just like we did on the other one. And I do recommend adding a little bit of glue because they're so petite. I'm going to add a little drop of glue after I stop filming, but I do want to share one thing with you. Some of you may have already seen me do this. If you've watched any of my other videos, let me zoom back out again. I love this Permalac clear protective coating from Potomac Beads, especially when I've used things like a silver wire guardian or this little bead cap for his hat. And so when I finish my work, I always take a moment to I have it sitting off to the side, but if you can polish your nails, you can do this. I just take a moment to brush this little coating over my silver findings, because if there's tarnish on a piece like this, there's not much you can do to change it out other than cut him apart and lose your whole little person. So I just take a minute, I brush it over that, and the rest of this is glass. But I love this Permalac coating when I'm using just base metal findings or just things that are just made for fashion jewelry, just to add a little longevity and a little quality to my work. And it's that simple. And then I'll just set him aside to dry. I'll do that to the little wire guardians on my little girls too. So this was such a fun, sweet project. And for those of you who are not into bead weaving, I just think you would have a lot of fun with this because it comes together literally in a few minutes without a lot of beads or supplies, and it's really quite easy. It's a little bit difficult to be doing it on camera where it's small and it's not up next to my face. But if you keep it laying on your mat, I think you would have really a lot of success at making these, and there are so many fun possibilities. So you'll see my little girls and boys show up in my next video. I thank you so much for choosing my video today and watching today. And if you're not subscribed to my channel, I would greatly appreciate it. It doesn't cost anything or obligate you to anything, and it really helps support my work. And then if you like getting notifications so you don't miss anything, you can tap the little bell, and then you'll get notifications when I put up a new video. But if notifications drive you crazy, then don't tap the bell. But I really appreciate your subscription, and I thank you all for spending time on my beading mat today, and I hope you're all having fun. Thanks for watching, everybody. Ciao, jewelry making friends.